Hello and welcome back to Bramlage Coliseum. I'm Ryan Black, the Manhattan Mercury sports editor. I'm also the K-State beat writer, and once again I'm joined here by Greg Woods. Greg, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Well, yeah, we're here right after K-State lost to Marquette. We're talking about the K-State men's team lost to Marquette here Saturday night, an 8 p.m. local tip-off, nationally televised ESPN2 game, and lost 73-65. So just another fairly narrow loss. I mean, in terms of, they kept it competitive for most of the second half after getting down by 13 at halftime.
Right. Yeah, well, for me, the moment that stands out was K-State cut it to one. Of all ways, on a Levi Stalker baby hook right there. That looked pretty good. Got pretty crazy. I think that the next time down was when things got kind of chippy. Antonio Gordon had some words for a Marquette player, and no technicals, though. That was the good news, but the bad news for K-State was that Marquette reeled off a 7-0 run after that. K-State fought back a little bit after that, but then Marquette reeled off a 5-0 run after that, which gave them a 10-point lead. So for me, that was kind of the turning point of the game. Was K-State was 1 point away from tying it up. They looked pretty good on offense, which is something they couldn't have said for most of the game. So I think that 7-0 run that Marquette reeled off really was the dagger as early as it came.
Well, and like you said, Greg, I was going to bring up that same thing in terms of, again, this little scuffle happened. K-State was only down by 1 point at that time, and then, as you mentioned, Marquette rips off the 7-0 run. K-State then did, like you said, respond with a 5-0 run, but that was it. That was the closest they got the rest of the game, down 52-49. And again, as we said, losing 73-65. I mean, Greg, after the game, Bruce Weber pretty much said the game was lost in the first half. He said that we never should have got down by 13, and so they were fighting from behind basically the entire game. Outside of that, McCole Maween, ironically enough, having the game-opening three-pointer, and K-State's last lead was a 5-2 lead very, very, very early on. But after that, like I said, Marquette just took control.
Yeah. Well, two sequences that stand out for me in the first half were two missed layups from K-State that both led to, one led to a long two and one led to a three. Xavier Sneed, who had kind of a forgettable game, missed a layup, and that led to a long two from Aneem from Marquette. And then a few minutes later, David Sloan misses a floater. That leads to a Greg Elliott three. And I think Weber mentioned that in the press conference too, was those were the two sequences that really were kind of backbreakers for K-State, especially considering the fact that for the game, K-State shot 32% from the field. Suffice it to say, that will not win you many games, especially against a team like Marquette. So.
Well, and as you mentioned, Greg, really the team as a whole struggled from the field. But I just look, when you look at the final stats and you see, Cardi and then Xavier combined to go, what is this here, 5 for 21 from the field.
Yeah.
That's just, you're not going to beat most bad teams doing that, but certainly not a team like Marquette. Greg, what did you think of Marcus Howard, getting to see him in person for the first time, watching him play?
Well, I was excited. It was a lot of fun. It was kind of the same feeling as when Oklahoma came here a couple of years ago with Trae Young, running the show. That was a lot of fun. Ironically enough, K-State played pretty well on defense in that game and also here tonight against Marcus Howard. He finishes 19 points, 16 from the field, 4 turnovers and 4 assists. But I think the key, which is what I wrote about after the game, was that his teammates really picked up the slack when Howard was out of the game. He did have 4 fouls, so he was out of the game for a while with foul trouble. But his teammates really picked up the slack. Greg Elliott had 9, Amir had 15. And his teammates really did what K-State was worried about Howard doing, ironically enough. And I think and even Cartier Jada mentioned this after the game. He was talking about how Howard, isn't much of a distributor, but his teammates kind of came out of the woodwork to a certain extent. They were surprised by a couple of teammates of his that really did some damage. So to me, that was part of the story of the game, was that it's easy to get caught up in how much Marcus Howard isn't a threat, and he is. He's arguably the best player in the nation as far as offense goes, but his teammates kind of stepped in when Howard wasn't in the game, and to me that kind of turned the tide.
Well, I think it's funny you brought up Trae Young, because I guess when something that stands out to me about both of them is how they don't stand out physically. I just think when you would look at both of them, you wouldn't think, wow, this guy is probably a high-level basketball player.
Right.
But they both, and even when Weber was kind of even asked kind of about the two and comparing them the other day when he was previewing this game, he did say that he thought maybe the biggest difference was that Howard is not the high-level distributor that Young is and was at that time when Oklahoma came in here as a top 5 ranked team. And what's really funny too, Greg, that specific game was where, if you kind of look, because again, Young had been setting the country on fire at that point, but really after that he started struggling because I think K-State kind of provided a blueprint for other teams on how to shut him down.
Right.
I don't know if you could say that K-State provided that tonight for future teams against Howard, but again, at least if nothing else, they're like, hey, they held him to less than half of what he scored last year, which was 45, which was the second most any single player has ever scored against K-State. So, Greg, I mean, I just don't know here. It's like, what does K-State do now? I mean, it's just they are continually losing opportunities to get some kind of marquee non-con win, and this would have been the biggest by far because Mississippi State. They're not quite that good this year, and it just does not seem like there's really going to be any good opportunities left for them to make a statement in the non-con.
Right. Well, their next game is here against Alabama State.
Which State, yeah.
Kind of says it all if you think about it.
Well, I mean, they're going to be on the level of the Florida A&M and Arkansas Pine Bluff teams that K-State's already played and beat handily.
Right. So I imagine they'll win. The problem is that all those teams are not going to provide the level of name recognition that wins over those teams really stand out on your tournament resume come March. So yeah, tonight definitely a missed opportunity on a number of levels, but especially when you consider the lack of, I guess, competitiveness on the rest of K-State's non-conference schedule. But they got to get wins, man. Like it's bad they lost this game, but I think moving forward you just got to scrape up wins where you can get them. And thank you. And see where they can go.
Well, and Greg, that's things like you said is that this just continues to put more and more and more pressure on them having to perform when it comes to Big 12 play, and we know how much of a meat grinder of a conference it is every year. So they're with each mounting loss, they're giving themselves less and less margin for error once conference play gets here.
Yeah.
And so, Greg, I think at this point they just have to kind of regroup, and it's gonna be. I think once they get Montavious Murphy back, he's gonna be. Again, he's missed the last 5 games, with an injury, and they really seem to like him a lot. And I think he'll at least bring some stability back, even though he's going to have to kind of work his way back into a rhythm after missing this kind of time. So, Greg, we'll just see what they can do when they come back here and try to get back and on an upswing and. Try to put this loss behind him. And hey, and even in your story, Cardi already said, hey, this loss is behind me. I'm not even thinking about it anymore. I don't know if I believe that, but that's what he said.
Right away, there on the podium after the game, he was like, this is past. I'm past. This is over. So maybe it's true. Maybe he was already past it. Maybe that's kind of what you have to do after a loss like this. I don't know. I've never played college basketball, so I wouldn't know. But that's what he said. So take it or leave it, I guess.
Well, folks, thanks again for joining us. Like I said, this is Ryan Black, and I'm here with Greg Woods, and we're signing off from Bramlage Coliseum.